Hey, everybody, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast. As you know, this podcast is a platform for people to share their stories of resilience. And today I have a very powerful story from my friend Deena Barnes. Miss Deena Barnes works at the Meadow Behavioral Health Center, the Meadow Behavioral Health Center, and she helps with integration and transition back into the sober world. She helps people with the integration and transition back into the sober world. Welcome, Deena Barnes.
Thank you. Hi, Sally. How you doing?
Good, good. Deena and I met at an event called What's Your Story that just took place 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas. And that's where I first heard her story. And oh my gosh, I'm like, how does anyone survive what Deena survived? And I am so thrilled for her to share her story and her journey with us today.
So, I am Deena, and I'm an alcoholic. I have been sober for a little over 4 years now, since August of 2018. My journey began long before that. Probably, you know, lifetime was pretty much set up for all of being an alcoholic. We have generations in our family of alcoholics, and I just happen to be one of the lucky ones. In 2017, I decided that I was just going to start drinking and drinking and drinking. I didn't care too much about anything else. I was one night, December 3rd of 2017, I decided I was going to drink 3 bottles of Crown Royal, which led me into kidney failure that night. Did not know it was also into the day. Did not know what was going on. My son's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend at the time, lived with me, and I kept calling for my son, and he came over, and he had grabbed the bottles out of my room, and he's like, this isn't good. And he said he'd come back, and he helped get me back into bed. And I guess sometime during that time, I had fallen back out of bed and landed on my arm, and apparently had gone into kidney failure and had what's called rhabdomyolysis. So I was laying in that bed, and I knew that I was going to die. Luckily, I was cognizant enough to know that I was going to die. So I crawled my way back out of the room and called for my son's ex-girlfriend to call 911, where they came and took me to the hospital. I was pretty close to having to be on kidney dialysis. I was in the hospital for over a week. I had quite a bit of issues going on. My arm, apparently I'd laid on my arm for 12 hours, which sent my ulnar nerve wrapped into my elbow, and it was just not a good scene. But still didn't stop me, because right after I got out of the hospital, I went straight to the liquor store and bought even more whiskey. So with that arm and everything going on, I still drank. At this point, was also starting to take pills because I was in so much pain with my arm. I was able to function and go to work, but really wasn't functioning. I mean, I thought I was doing great and fantastic. I was still able to go to work. I was able to drink. Well, ended up having the elbow surgery that definitely changed part of my life, because that surgery also created me to not be able to straighten my elbow out. I still live with constant pain. So I have a constant reminder of my pain on a daily basis. And even before that surgery, I took 5 shots of whiskey and got out of that surgery and was like, hey, I can still drink. I'm doing great. And it just progressed into where I would miss 4 or 5 days of work because I was drinking constantly. To then I wouldn't eat for days. All I could do was drink. Ended up numerous times to the hospital. I mean, I probably 911 was called probably 6 or 7 times. Paramedics came, I want to say it was 5 times, and took me to the hospital. And I would continuously get what's called banana bags, which is vitamins that you're missing when you continuously drink. And I also had a tumor on my liver from what what we'll probably say is drinking now. And luckily, it wasn't or still isn't anything. But the summer of 2018, it had just gotten really, really bad where my son would find me passed out. One particular night, my youngest son, he had taken the bottle from me and I held him up by his throat up against the wall, and I don't remember any of it.
Mm.
And I called my best friend the next day and I said, "Hey, I've got a problem." He's like, "Oh, no, you got a big problem." And I finally admitted to my therapist that I had a drinking problem. And the whole time during this conversation with my therapist in her office, I am running back and forth to the bathroom because I can't keep anything down. And this was how this my alcoholism was going. I couldn't eat anything, couldn't keep anything down but liquor. What was going on was my body had grown so accustomed to just the liquor that my organs were starting to eat each other.
Mm.
And I continued on this path. And finally, in August, I don't know what switch went off in me. What I do know is that I'm very thankful it did. But on August 21st, I sent a text message at 4 a.m. to a friend of mine. And he was actually worked with me. And I said, "Hey, I need to go to treatment." But during that week, it was on a Wednesday that had happened. I had been really, really sick. I couldn't eat. I couldn't keep anything down other than liquor. And I knew if I sat there any longer, I was going to die again. And by now, I mean, there's been several episodes that I shouldn't be around. I should not have lived through this.
Mm.
And I had literally thrown up all over my room. I mean, everywhere. And went to my therapist, and we found what at that point it was called Serenity View. After going through, well, are we going to send her to Florida? Are we going to send her to California? And my therapist was like, "No, she'll end up leaving." And they found this small hole in the wall place in Princeton, Texas called Serenity View. And so I was told that I could not be too drunk to get on the airplane, and I just needed to maintain. And that's exactly what I did all day long. I maintained. I sat there still in my room. Now, mind you, it's not a good scene. It's a very horror scene in my room at this point. And I'm just sitting there drinking and drinking and drinking, just trying to maintain so I don't get sick, because I thought I was going through withdrawals at the time. And waited for time for my flight to go. And all I packed, and this kind of tells you what frame of mind I was in, all I packed was a pair of pajama bottoms, a hoodie. Now, mind you, this is August. I am in Alaska this time, but I'm going to Texas, and I am from the South originally, so I know it's hot. But my brain did not even function. It didn't function that I was leaving for a month. And the only thing I packed was those pajama bottoms, a hoodie, and my 40-year-old Winnie the Pooh that my brother Jeff gave me. That is it.
So, Deena, before we go into that other section, I have a few questions.
Okay.
You said you started drinking in 2017.
I started drinking earlier than that, but it became a problem when I can really pinpoint when it became a problem in 2017.
Okay, in 2017. And between 2017 and August of 2018, that's when your health started to deteriorate rapidly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very rapidly, yes.
Yeah. And that's your organs eating each other, your body shutting down.
Yes.
But it took you a whole year. You started, but it took you a whole year. What was going through your thought process at that time? Like, were you not sober enough to understand how sick you were, or were you? Tell me about like what was going on, within that whole year that kept you in that space.
I was in denial.
Okay, denial.
I had to live a double. I had to live a double life of what I was doing at home, and then I had to lead my work life. Mm-hmm. I was running a government contract for a nonprofit at the time. And growing up, there's always been with my mother, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. So there's always been a sense of order. And I had that sense of order. And what was going through my mind is nobody can know this secret. Mm-hmm. I'm hiding this very well. I'm just sick. And it was my best friend that said, something's wrong with you before anything. He's the one that started having me go to the doctor.
Mm, mm.
And I would never tell him what's wrong. He just thought I was losing weight because something else was wrong with me internally, not knowing it was a drinking problem.
Wow, you kept that hidden really well.
Or so I thought. Most alcoholics, we do keep it hidden really well. Well, we think we do, but really we're not. No.
Yeah, so I think, and I'm not quite familiar with the terms, but what you're saying is that you are a functional alcoholic
I was functional until I was no longer functional.
until you were no longer functional. Oh my gosh. Wow. To go through that and not share with anyone, but your kids knew, but you just was in a state where you're in denial and you won't listen to anyone.
Yes, yes. And when I was in the hospital with the rhabdomyolysis, they were telling me, well, this generally happens with alcoholics and drug users. Are you sure you haven't been drinking? And of course, I'm like, nah, hadn't drank a drop. I'm not a drinker.
Oh,
No, no,
yeah.
not even realizing, they could do blood tests and check
That's what
my,
I was
my,
thinking.
you know, I mean, hey,
Yeah, and
that
then
was my
you
thought
and
process.
then you mentioned something so dangerous. You had 6 shots of whiskey before you went in for your surgery, and I'm assuming that you had to go under for that surgery.
Yeah, yes. Actually, it was five, but it was
5,
five.
and no one knew. You were just
Oh,
you were living on the edge.
yeah, that was not, I thought I was thriving at that time in my life. I really thought I was doing great.
Yeah, yeah. So now you're on the
But the
your
key
pack.
of all
Mm-hmm.
this, too, is how uneducated I was.
Mm, mm. Uneducated about your situation or being an alcoholic. What? Tell us about that.
Yes. I was
Okay.
so uneducated about substance use disorder
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just everything about it. I'd been to one AA meeting because I was told that I need to go. I was told when I walked in there, it wasn't so much that I was told, but it was expected when you go into an AA meeting that you announce yourself, hey, I'm Deena, I'm an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that meant at that time.
Mm.
And now I could write a full thesis on alcoholism right now.
Yeah, and thank God for your journey that you're able to share it with other people now. But so tell us, you're pack your backpack with your Winnie the Pooh PJs, and you're on your way to Texas.
Yes. So I get to the airport and I'm still can't keep anything down. The bars were closed inside the airport because it was later. I get on the plane and I am so thankful to get on the plane so I can drink. And like I said, I thought I was going through withdrawals, and the flight from Anchorage to Seattle, I had a whole seat to myself. It was almost an empty plane. I could get up and vomit whenever I wanted to and drink whatever I wanted to. So I was good. So I get to Seattle and I'm waiting. It's early in the morning. I'm waiting for the bars to open up because at this point I am really just can't keep anything down still. I've now taken the tour of every restroom in SeaTac Airport, and I finally get to a bar that's open up. And I mean, I am drinking as much as I possibly can, and it is full glasses of whiskey with just like a splash of Diet Coke. And I like I said, I thought I was going through withdrawals at the time. So here I am. I'm still continuing to have my buzz, and I'm still not doing well, but I have to make it from Seattle to Dallas. I get on the plane and I get on a window seat. And I have two of the cleanest people I've ever seen in my life on this plane
Uh-huh.
sitting right next to me. And it was pre COVID. So, but they're the ones that carry the Lysol wipes in their little baggies.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, oh, great. This is not good
Right.
because I'm looking rough. I'm probably smelling terrible at this point. And I mean, they're probably just like, oh, great. I'm just stuck with this girl.
Right.
So we're on the flight, and I'm having to talk myself down to, you know what, we're not going to get up, we're not going to vomit, we're just going to sit here. She's going to bring you a drink here soon, and I've flown so much that I can tell you what time the drink cart's going to come.
Right.
So finally, they come, and I'm tell her I need two crowns, and I need a Diet Coke, and so she goes to hand me the Diet Coke, and I am just like, how in the world am I going to get this without spilling it on these two people? So I'm holding it with both hands and just praying, please, 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 just make it. Now, being on an airplane, everybody knows it is not a far trek from where the flight attendant gives you the drink to where you're sitting,
Right.
even on the window seat. And that was the longest time I've ever held a glass of Diet Coke in my life because it just couldn't get to me fast enough.
Were you
And
shaking,
I
Dina?
drank, and I mean, oh yes,
Was
I
it
was
the shaking?
definitely. I mean, yeah, the shakes
Okay.
were extremely
Mm,
bad. And I mean, I was still maintaining with the alcohol, but I could not stop shaking. I could not stop trembling. Every ounce of my body was just
mm,
almost like convulsing, but I was able to maintain it.
mhm.
So finally, I get to Dallas Airport and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I see a 7-Eleven. So there I'm buying toiletries, toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant, typical things, because I have no idea what I'm going into.
Right.
And I get there and I get down to baggage claim, which of course I don't have any baggage claim because I didn't put anything in there because all I had was my backpack.
Mm,
And I see this gentleman and he's holding up a sign with my name on it. And I walk up and he goes, "Hey, I'm John." And I go, "Hey, I'm the person you're looking for." And he goes, "Where's your luggage?" And I said, "I didn't bring any with me." And he's like, "You flew from Alaska to here with no luggage?" I said, "Yep." I
uh-huh.
said, "And by the way, you might need to make frequent stops because I can't keep anything down."
Mhm.
And he goes, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Well, welcome to the club." And I go, "Well, what club is that?" And he goes, "Welcome to the Alcoholics Club." Little did I know at that time. So we have to go pick up another patient, and she has brought her entire household with her. She's got like 8 bags.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, "Oh, okay." Well, as we're talking, she introduces herself and tells me that she's addicted to meth and heroin. And I'm like, "Oh, well, I don't think I've ever met anybody that's addicted to meth and heroin." At that point, didn't really care because I just needed to get someplace and lay down.
Yeah.
I was desperate for a bed. So we get out there, and it's a beautiful place. It is in the middle of nowhere, Texas. But if you have seen the movie Deliverance, it's very similar to that. I
Mhm.
mean, literally, it's you're driving through the country and all of a sudden you see this white picket fence. And that would be Serenity View, the meadows of Texas. And I get in there and just waiting for intake. And I get into intake, and the girl that was with me, the nurse walks in and is like, "Hey, who wants to go first?" And it's really bad when a meth heroin addict looks at you and says, "She definitely needs more help than I do right now." And so I go through the intake process and
Uh-huh.
I finally get into my room and they do my bag search and they're calling the doctor to see what they can give me because I can't keep anything down. So they can't give me the normal meds that everybody else gets. And finally, they come in to do my luggage search and they're like, "Hey, where's your luggage?" I'm like, "This is it." And they're like, "I don't think you have enough." And I go, "Well, I really don't feel well. Can I just lay down?" So the nurse comes in, gives me a shot. Her name was Michelle. And, I sleep through the night, through the next day. The psychiatrist comes in, takes me to his office, and I talk with him. And I told him within about 3 minutes, I said, "I'm about to throw up. I can't, you know." And he's like, "Get out of my office, just go." So that was on a Wednesday. On Friday, I was still in what they call detox and still was struggling with keeping things down. And it was later on in the afternoon that I was in severe pain. And finally, after going back and forth with the nurse, they were trying to figure out what to do. They finally called 911 and took me to Medical City McKinney. And I find out that my gallbladder had ruptured probably on the Sunday prior to me leaving, and I was going septic because it had been that long. And that was why I couldn't keep anything down. And when I woke up from that surgery of them removing what was left is when I had that disconnect that I can't do this anymore, that
Mm.
I can't continue to make these phone calls to my kids, to my friends, or anybody. And even when I left for treatment, I didn't even tell my kids I was gone. I didn't tell any of my family. I called their dads and I said, "Hey, I'm going to treatment. I need you to tell the kids."
Mhm.
So I had isolated myself in treatment as well.
Well, Dina, were you in pain? Your gallbladder ruptures, and I don't know what that's like. But were you in pain, or were you just throwing up? How were you
I was just
feeling?
I was just throwing up. I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was withdrawals.
Mm.
And I knew once I got into treatment, my thought is, hey, I'm going to treatment. This is the end all be all. I'm going to be cured. I'm going to be fixed.
Mm.
Never realized it was another health issue
Wow.
until they told me what it was. So I wasn't going through withdrawals the entire time. I had a
Right.
ruptured gallbladder.
Wow. You were kept alive for this purpose that you are serving right now.
It took me a while to realize that.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with there once I got out of treatment, um, went back to Alaska. That didn't work out so well. Actually, that worked out pretty terrible. Uh, the work tolerance, my boss was, the work tolerance wasn't there anymore. The trust wasn't there anymore. And I should have just not gone back like I was suggested. I should have followed what the therapist and the psychiatrist said.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have just gone to sober living. I should have gone to IOP. I should have never returned to Alaska. But I did. I lasted 4 months. And thankfully, I had friends here in Texas that I still currently live with that said, hey, you need to come down here because I wasn't going to survive. And I made it down here. I worked at Target for a little while until I figured out what I wanted to do when I grow up. And then when my 2 year sobriety hit, I made a phone call out to what is now called the Meadows. And I said, hey, I'm ready to come out there and work. Got my 2 years. And that's when I started working for the treatment center that I was in and started my journey with that.
Yeah.
And so I started working there. So I arrived in treatment, back in Alaska from treatment, October 1 of 2018. Started working for the Meadows of Texas, October 1 of 2020. And I started working in my current position, October 2nd of 2022. So
Okay.
there's definitely been a higher power that has led me in this direction in October, obviously, every 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking back on that, did you see like you had to go through that to be where you are today?
I wouldn't change any of it. And a lot
Yeah.
of people are like, oh my gosh, you've gone through this, you've gone through that. I wouldn't change any of it. And I wouldn't change the fact that I'm an alcoholic. I have no shame in it. I do go through times where sometimes, just like everybody, of why am I this way?
Yeah.
It's not as often now because I do have a purpose and I do have a voice for those that can't speak, that are in recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long so 2020 was October 2020 to 2022, almost 2 years since you've been on your recovery journey.
Right. So it's actually 4 years. Um, my recovery journey, the first year, it was terrible. I uh, got out of treatment, went to Alaska, was in a earthquake in an elevator and just sunk. I moved to Texas, only knew a handful of people. And basically, I had to start from square one with everything that I did from work, my personal life, my home life. Had to relearn everything, and I had to do it newly sober, away from my kids, away from my family, and pretty much what I felt like was on my own.
Huh.
Ripped the band aid off and
Yeah.
just jumped in it with both feet.
How long did it
And
take
during
your
this,
family and friends to trust you again?
it's still a process.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's always going to be a process. With my kids, I don't live there. They do trust me more. We still go through bits and pieces of what happened in the past. And I don't see them as much as I would like to, but they definitely don't think that I'm drinking anymore. They definitely don't have those fears that I'm drinking, but we still have to talk about the hard stuff on a regular basis
Yeah.
when we do talk. Um, my oldest son just recently got married, and the girl he married also worked for the same company because my son works for the same company that I used to work at. And so when he got married, she and I had to have some hard conversations because she was part of this entire process of when I
Mm.
was constantly sick at work. She had to watch it happen. And then marrying my son, she was in the family with everything right there thrown at her. So she and I had to have some hard conversations.
Yeah.
And I had to make amends for my behavior as well when I
Right.
did know her.
Yeah. Yeah. So you glazed over something. Uh, a earthquake and being stuck in an elevator.
Yes,
Tell us
that
about
was
that. Yeah. What?
that was a
That sounds
uh,
severe.
I've slept a few times since that happened.
Uh,
Yes, I was. It was early morning, and I was in an elevator going downstairs in the apartment that I lived in. It had an elevator. It was I was on the sixth floor, and all of a sudden I'm in there with another gentleman, and it starts shaking, and I mean it was definitely nothing before. So it started shaking, and I thought it quick moments I realized this is an earthquake. Well, he locked himself up, and I'm like, you can't do that, or else if we hit the ground, you're going to break every bone. You've got to relax. Just talk to me. And so we finally hit at the second floor, and it was a hard jolt. I mean, people do pay for rides like this. This is definitely not something I ever want to do again. We get out, go down to the lobby. I mean, it is just loaded with people. There are people that can't get up to the rooms or get down because the building that I lived in was also a building that they used for the Native Hospital during the wintertime for
mm,
people that lived out in the villages to come to stay at when they have to go to the Alaska Native Center for medical care. So they were injured people that weren't injured from the earthquake, but they were unable to move up and down easily through the stairs. So we were trying to get them down or up the stairs, whatever needed to be done. We didn't know what it looked like as far as inside the city, as far as work was concerned, because the job I had was mission essential with the Army. And we, with us being nonprofit and at the dining facility, I had to get to work as well. It was just mass chaos.
well, I'm glad you shared that story because as I listened to you share it, something came out of that. You're caring, nurturing, but you think quick on your feet because you and that man were both
Yes,
in there. You could have reacted differently and like the way he did, but you were
yes,
able to walk him through that. And would you say that, those characteristics led you through what, your journey as you recovered and now you're using those to help other people?
yes. It's a blessing and a curse because I am a rescuer,
Mm,
and but a lot of times I don't rescue myself.
mm,
I'm so busy helping other people that I don't focus on what I need. And that's also what led to the alcoholism, that I wasn't balancing my life well enough. And I was trying to drown out everything I was thinking and feeling
yeah,
and what I needed.
yeah. But now, I'm sure now you're doing your self care and taking care of
Yes.
you because your cup needs to be full. Oh my gosh, I'm repeating from the last podcast because it seems so appropriate. It just seems so appropriate though. Like your cup needs to be full in order to help other people. You can't help people if your cup
Yes.
is half full. I love
Yes.
that. I love that. So, what's a takeaway for our audience today?
Educate yourself on alcoholism, that don't be afraid to call somebody. Don't be afraid to walk into that AA meeting or let somebody know what you're feeling. Don't isolate, and just be honest with yourself.
Yeah,
Be honest with others. There's no shame in substance use disorder. None.
yeah. I really like that. Is that, and I always give a takeaway at the end too, which I really like that. Deena, what I'm hearing you say throughout this whole thing is that it takes a tribe and it takes a village. Don't be embarrassed to talk to people and share what you're going through. It's the only way the healing starts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Deena, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you,
And
Sally.
yes, I want to thank our audience for listening. If you love our show, rate, review, and share with your friends. Thank you to Amber behind the decks and Sticky Paw Studio.